How's it going, guys? CrackedRack here, and today I'm going to be finalizing the holy trinity of autism by telling you all how I got fired from Burger King. Apparently, you guys really liked those earlier videos I made about getting fired and thought they were hilarious, which is kind of a shock to me because upon releasing those videos, I thought I was just going to be bullied and laughed at for being so fucking retarded, I somehow managed to get fired from like 8 fast food jobs. Anyway, this story happened 4 years ago when I was about 16. I had just moved to Billings, Montana with my parents after some family drama, and if you aren't aware, the only things that are in Billings, Montana are toothless hookers and Burger Kings. So when I was 16, I was under the delusion that I was going to be a rock star someday, and the only way I was going to be able to do that was if I somehow earned some cash to buy some killer camera equipment so that I could make some awesome music videos. What ended up happening to that very same equipment 2 years later was I used it to pretend to go on a meth-fueled murder rampage of cartoon characters I didn't like. But you better not tell little 16-year-old Matthew that. He might cry. Anyway, after doing some contemplating, little 16-year-old me decided that the best way to get money for equipment was to get a shitty throwaway job. Now keep in mind, these events actually occurred long before any of my other firing videos. At this point in time, I was a firing virgin. I hadn't been fired anywhere, and I was also an actual virgin too. Anyway, so after deciding that I needed to get a job, I headed out onto the dirty, grimy streets of Billings to see if I could find any restaurants or bars that were hiring. Keep in mind, at this point in time, I had dropped out of high school, so I didn't have any responsibilities all day, so I could pretty much just do whatever I wanted. The first place I went to was this really sketchy, ugly bar for old people, because they had a now hiring sign hanging outside their window. Well, actually saying that it was hanging is giving the place too much credit. It was fucking swinging by a lone string, holding it up in a crooked fashion. So anyway, I go in there, and the only person behind the bar was this old woman, probably in her late 30s or early 40s. I took a seat a few feet away from her at the bar and asked if they had any job applications. The woman responded not by giving me a job application, but by telling me how cute I was. Then, seconds after that, a group of older women the exact same age as the bartender approached me and started loudly exclaiming how cute I was and how they could just eat me up, and one of the women actually put her hand on my leg. At this point, I hadn't a single clue what kind of fucked up pedophile MILF factory I had just stepped into, and I wanted no part of it. So I got up off my seat and headed back out to the streets to find a job. After walking around the dirty, dusty, nasty streets of Billings for hours at a time, I finally came across a Burger King that had a giant hiring sign out front. Filled with false relief, I walked inside and asked for a job application. With this, I was then greeted by the manager of this location, who looked like Edmund Kemper. He was gigantic, at least 6'5", had little to no teeth, and he smelled like a fresh abortion on a summer day. He greeted me by saying, "Hello, I heard you were looking for a job." Though unbeknownst to him, right when he said hello, it felt like a giant bag of rotting shit flew out of his mouth and exploded onto my face. This guy's breath smelled like he had been deeply eating the ass of Susan Boyle every day for 5 years. But I was nice to him regardless because I wanted that job. After expressing interest in the job, the manager didn't even make me fill out an app and just interviewed me on the spot because they were so desperate for employees. I would later find out why. So the first major red flag about this job position was that I was the only young, fit, healthy person in the entire crew. Every other employee was either 400 pounds, a chain smoker, or a woman who looked like they were being sex trafficked in said Burger King. This was not a happy place. But my first day was the next day, and I was just happy that I had finally gotten a real job. So fast forward to my first shift the next day, I didn't have to do anything but observe the other employees to get a general idea of what my job was. In theory, this sounds easy, right? Well, it was like watching a fucking horror movie. Sitting in the dark corner of a Burger King kitchen while watching 50-year-old 400-pound chain smokers have screaming matches at each other over things like oversalting the fries is actually horrifying. Literally, I was genuinely traumatized after my first day working there. I was somehow covered in fry grease even though I hadn't touched a single thing in the kitchen, and I had a massive migraine from the amount of toxicity that was occurring in that kitchen. It was just a fucking nightmare. As time went on and I started actually performing my shift responsibilities, I really started to notice just how toxic and awful the management was. And from what I've heard, this isn't even just exclusive to that Burger King. Burger King notoriously has awful management and terrible, terrible employees. My manager in particular, the guy who looks like Ed Kemper, was a fucking prick. First off, behavior aside, he was a creep. He had just gotten divorced by his wife for cheating and was sleeping in his car outside of the said Burger King. He would frequently come into work crying. I'd literally take an order at the front counter and yell back, "Hey, let's get some fries started." And in response, I'd hear him fucking crying in the back while going, "I just miss her so much." I mean, he was so obsessive and creepy about his wife, I almost expected him to come into work one day with her head chopped off so he could put it in the deep fryer. But yeah, that aside, he was a fucking asshole to me. On my third day there, he was watching me prepare some fries, and I accidentally left the fry scoop in the pile of fries for less than a second, and he started screaming at me about how fucking stupid I was and how he was gonna write me up and ruin my career and get me fired. He was just a real piece of shit, and he wasn't even the only piece of shit there. There was another manager here who was about 500 fucking pounds who would put horrible post-it notes all over the walls all day talking about how she could fire us instantly if she ever caught us breaking rules, and how if we even took 0.1% more food than we were supposed to on our lunch breaks, we would be fired instantly. My other coworkers weren't much better. In the roster of coworkers, there was also a mentally retarded man who should definitely not have been working there. I'm not trying to be rude, but the motherfucker literally couldn't string together a sentence and would drool all over everything, including the countertops where food went. And look, I get hiring the mentally disabled to give them opportunities, but maybe don't give the towering, drooling retard of doom responsibility over food that hundreds of people are going to be eating that day. Anyway, I only lasted 2 weeks at this Burger King. It was that toxic. I hated working there so much, I would actually cry before shifts because I dreaded walking into that kitchen of hell so much. Now, how I got fired is not an interesting story. Essentially, I just didn't show up to work one day, and as a result, I got like 15 extremely angry voicemails from the manager pretty much telling me I'm a piece of shit for not showing up to my Burger King shift. So I called them up the next day, said this is Matthew Holman, and I quit. And then I hung up. I received my paycheck in the mail a week later, and that's really the end of that. So the moral of the story here is to just never ever work at Burger King. I'm not saying don't work at fast food because not all fast food is bad. Even though I've been fired from places like Starbucks and Taco Bell, at least I can say those places are competent and not pits of hell. The reason I got fired from those places was because of my stupidity. But good God, Burger King in particular is just completely fucking incompetent. The management hate their lives and take it out on the employees, and the food is disgusting. Burger King by far has the most greasy food of any fast food establishment, and being around that all day, every day will fuck your skin up and fuck your stomach up. Just don't work here. If you are considering getting a job here, go apply to KFC or literally anywhere else that treats their employees with a modicum of respect.